everyone, and welcome to this week's Culture Report. I'm Antonia Velez. This week, we have a little bit of Black History Month mixed with a little bit of pop culture, including adding context to Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl halftime show and Beyonce's upcoming tour. Love that. We're also introducing a new segment on the show where we highlight individuals that put in the work to make our communities better. But let's start in Seattle, where one museum is honoring the legacy of the Black Panther Party. A pivotal part of Black history was the fight against the injustice of a Jim Crow America. According to National Archives, the Black Panther Party was formed in October 1966 in Oakland, California in response. It focused on Black nationalism, socialism, and armed self-defense. The party quickly grew and expanded beyond California, and the first chapter outside of the state was authorized in Seattle. And as Sharon Yu with our sister station in Seattle, King 5 shows us, the party's legacy lives on with a new museum.
Black berets, leather jackets, raised fists and guns. These are all striking images of the Black Panther Party. Formed in California in 1966, the revolutionary organization fought for Black power and protection.
We were the first chapter formed outside of the state of California.
Motivated by Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination and the killing of California Black Panther member Bobby Hutton by Oakland police, brothers Elmer and Aaron Dixon formed the Seattle chapter in 1968.
The Black Power movement was growing.
They rallied hundreds of locals to protect Black and brown communities.
Black Panthers up here with guns on the second floor.
The guns drew the attention of the federal government.
J. Edgar Hoover named us the #1 threat to the internal security of the United States. They called black hate groups. And so they assassinated Panthers. They attacked our offices. That's where the violence emanated from.
Their movement grew from self-defense to survival. They monitored police activity to protect Black residents.
That was our police alert patrol, where we armed ourselves with shotguns and law books to patrol police officers in our communities. Coming up on the Panther office.
A quick tour of Seattle's Madrona neighborhood shows the group's impact beyond their right to bear arms.
That's where the Panther office was.
Their first office at 34th and East Union was just blocks away from the Dixon family home, where an idea turned into action. And in the backyard of that home, at this church, the Panthers fed hungry children.
2,000 kids a week, a hot breakfast out of 5 locations in Seattle, and thousands of kids across the country. We ended up embarrassing the federal government to launch free breakfast and free lunch programs. People think that it was the federal government that started that. It was the Black Panther Party that set that example. So we're headed to the People's Wall now.
Just a short drive from the church is their second office, commemorated by this mural at 20th and Spruce.
One of the things as I look on the wall, these are our fallen comrades that died here in Seattle. You'll see Carolyn Downs' name is up there.
The Carolyn Downs Family Medical Center is yet another legacy built to overcome health disparities.
We found out that the second highest infant mortality rate in the whole state of Washington was right here in the CD, which was 77% Black back then. We had no funds. We did it based on volunteers and donated materials. And we started a free medical clinic, and today it is still running.
It's humbling, it really is.
Brandy Taylor is the CEO of Seattle Roots Community Health, which runs Carolyn Downs.
I think about what they went through to keep those doors open for so long. It's powerful.
Taylor says the spirit of free health care for all resonates decades later. The clinic has more than 60,000 patient visits a year. Remembering the past is a vital part of that care.
Part of orientation for every employee, we're going to tell you what our history is. I don't know that I've seen anyone come in and not appreciate and really lean into that.
Nearly 50 years after the Seattle Black Panther Party disbanded, what's next?
We're building an interpretive and research center, Black Panther Party Seattle chapter.
Not far from its old stomping grounds of Madrona, at the corner of Yesler and 2nd, will be a way to share that history with the community.
The idea is to have a place where people, particularly young people, can come and learn about revolutionary movements, including the Black Panther Party, study and observe history. I think the spirit of the Black Panther Party is relevant today, that can guide the development of a new organizations that can speak to the needs of the community.
With photojournalist Rachel Kim for Facing Race, Sharon Yu, King 5 News.
And to talk about this story, we have King 5 reporter Sharon Yu joining us today all the way from Seattle. How's it going, Sharon?
Hey, Antonia, good to see you, and thanks for running our story. It's going great over here.
Of course, thank you so much for chatting with us. I think stories like this one are crucial, especially as we see pushes to not tell similar aspects of history. But I'm curious, as a reporter, what called you to this particular story?
Yeah, so I reached out to Mr. Dixon Elmer, and I asked him if he wanted to do a Black History Month story, because I think it does bring different reactions when we reach out to different communities and we're like, hey, we want to do a story on your community for this month. Then maybe some folks don't want to do that. But Mr. Dixon was very open to it, especially because they are opening that museum and interpretive center, and they want to kind of get the word out. So he was down for it and was so gracious with his time. And he also wanted to make sure the reason why they have this museum and interpretive center in the works is so that the history isn't forgotten and the young people get a chance to learn from it as well.
That's awesome. I just think that's so important. And I'm curious, are there any fun facts or interesting tidbits that maybe didn't make your reporting that you'd want to highlight?
Yeah, I really want to highlight the fact that the Dixon family, so Mr. Dixon's mother, she actually passed away not too long ago, but she has just kind of been highlighted as the matriarch of the family. All of this was kind of brewed out of the Dixon family home, and I think we have to highlight the fact that yes, this mom was hosting a bunch of people. They had people coming in and out of their home, and it was just kind of the starting ground of all of this. So, and she was gracious. She contributed to the free breakfast program. She was cooking for the kids, and so it's kind of an underrated piece of history that we weren't able to include because unfortunately she did pass away.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for telling this story and for highlighting all of this and for chatting with us today. We really appreciate you, Sharon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, now no matter what your stance is on American football, there's a good chance you watch the halftime show on Super Bowl Sunday. I mean, no hate, my friends and I got together and turned the TV on only to watch Kendrick Lamar. I get it. And social media seems to have gotten it too. People are still talking about his performance online. And it's all for good reason. In true Kendrick fashion, this halftime show was layered, packed with history, and made a statement. Whether you caught it or not is a different story. I had a conversation with Spelman College professor and poet Sequoia Maynor about all the different meanings behind Kendrick's performance.
So I was surprised and elated to see Samuel L. Jackson as Uncle Sam. I thought that kind of iconography was extremely powerful. And he's a character that comes to symbolize the trappings of a capitalist American system that at once upholds Black artists, Black entertainers, but also places these constraints and demands around them, right? So I think about Sam Jackson as Uncle Sam in this performance, and he says things to Kendrick like, you got to play this American game. You know, that you can't be too loud, too ghetto. You got to tighten up, right? And for me, that really was a powerful representation of all the kind of conflicting messages that Black artists who are so public and visible, like Kendrick Lamar, have to contend with in their performances, right? Serena Williams dancing on stage, doing the Crip Walk, which is a dance that comes out of Los Angeles, comes out of a specific place. A lot of people said, oh, you know, that's a jab at Drake, right? Serena is Drake's ex. But we forget in 2012, Serena was lambasted, right, for doing the Crip Walk on the world stage at the it was at the Olympics, right, the London Olympics. And that was a moment in which we really saw this vitriol aimed at one of the most excellent top performers, saying that she was too loud and that she was too ghetto for a kind of respectable sport like tennis.
I think something else that I've heard a lot of people talk about. This play on Gil Scott-Heron's poem, The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. Kendrick, in his performance, says the revolution will be televised. You
Mhm.
picked the right time, but the wrong guy. Gil Scott-Heron's poem is basically a call to action. What do you think Kendrick's switch means?
Yes, it's a call to action. But I think that he also says a lot more in that poem, right? He says, you won't be able to stay at home, right? You won't be able to plug in, turn on. The revolution's not going to be televised. And on the one hand, that means, right, all the action that's happening, it's going to be out in the street. If you want to participate in the remaking of a American system and American culture, you're going to have to actively participate, right? You can't be passive. There's no passive consumption in this. But I think that he's also saying that media narratives, which are on TV, are never going to tell the story of a true revolution that comes from the ground up, right? That it has to be lived, it has to be experienced, and that the translation of that story by an American media system is going to already be skewed and is not going to kind of advocate from a revolutionary perspective. So therefore, it won't be televised, right? Now, Kendrick's shift is so kind of interesting to me. And the fact that he ends with this demand, this call, turn the TV off, turn the TV off. But that demand to turn the TV off actually reminds me of Hair On Again, right? Turn the TV off because the TV is controlling you. The TV is giving you narratives that are not all true, right? There certainly is this theme of the game and competition, right? So he starts us off. I think about the stage and the set of the controller, that X and that O. Um, but the X and O also reminds me of like a tic-tac-toe game, right? And those boxes and being squared off in those boxes and having to make the right move, right? Having to be strategic. And for me, that is the Black person in America. That is the striving Black person in America, having to make decisions, right, about how one might move and be without dying in the game, right? For me, I think the most powerful image of the entire performance was the group of dancers, and this was around the song Humble, right? At that time of the performance, the group of dancers forming that American flag, the red, white, and blue, and seeing that flag divided, right, with Kendrick in the middle, it really had me thinking about uh the extreme polarization in our nation. It had me thinking about the Black labor that undergirds this American nation, right? The Black labor that has built up this nation. It makes me think about the ways that at once Black entertainers are held up as exceptional, right? So often they're leading the kind of charge of innovation. They're leading the culture, right? They are the culture. And yet, if even if they are the fabric of the nation, right? The fabric of the flag, that flag disintegrates, right? That I think about the way that those dancers scattered at one point, right? And it wasn't just polarization, it was chaos, it was confusion. And I think that so often that's kind of the experience of the Black individual in this country, right? Striving, trying to be trying to be a citizen, right? Trying to be a patriot and proud of this nation, and yet feeling confused, feeling lost, feeling disorganized, feeling chaotic, right? So that was a really powerful symbol for me. One of the things that's interesting is that while talking to students, some of them came in and said, like, we appreciate Kendrick. We knew that, that there were going to be many layers and that it would be meaningful, but we were also a little underwhelmed. And I was like, well, what does that mean, underwhelmed, right? And I guess they were expecting pyrotechnics, thinking about how Lady Gaga flew in off the roof, right? And Michael Jackson had all these theatrics, and that's never been Kendrick. He's never been a man of spectacle, always a man of kind of quiet, contemplative, interior kind of messages. His songs and albums always invite replay and re-listening, re-examination. They make you perform the thing that he's asking you to do, right? He wants us to self-examine and he makes you do that again, again. He makes you work for it, right? So I think the one thing I would want people to take away is that Black excellence looks like all sorts of things, right? It can look loud, it can look flashy, it can look beautiful and elegant like Beyonce, right? It can look jazzy, it could look funky, but it could also look quiet, you know, it could also look subtle. It could also look interior, and that's valuable too.
Now, Dr. Maynor and I talked for what seemed like hours, but unfortunately, we can't include the whole chat here. However, you can watch our full conversation on 9news.com. Dr. Maynor also wrote a book about Kendrick's To Pimp a Butterfly album, which can be found on Amazon. And we all know Beyonce's going on tour. Love that. But if you're a Denver-based fan, you're out of luck. The city isn't one of her stops this time around. Historians say there's a reason why, and it has to do with Black history. 9 News reporter Janelle Finch explains.
This ain't Texas, and it won't be Denver. Global sensation Beyonce is getting on the saddle for just 9 cities on her Cowboy Carter and the Rodeo Chitlin Circuit tour. Historian and artist Chloe Duplessis says there's a reason.
If you're familiar with the Chitlin Circuit, it almost looks like she's mimicking these beautiful traveled routes of these ancient acts.
She says the Chitlin Circuit had a real history in Black entertainment between the 1930s and 1960s during the segregation era.
It was a beautiful network created by people of color to support people of color, specifically Black people, musicians, comedians, different acts, variety acts. And it was in an effort, a response, I believe, to the reality that it was unsafe to go to certain places or you weren't always welcome in certain places.
Duplessis grew up in Louisiana on the circuit.
I immediately think about growing up as a little girl in the beauty shop that my mother owned. And I remember them talking about the Chitlin Circuit, who came, who toured, who was there.
While Denver doesn't have a place in this history or on the tour, she says the city is making a mark on other Black entertainers.
You've seen a lot of Black acts, Black comedians, Trevor Noah, Dave Chappelle. You've seen some really strong acts come here, do Red Rocks, do really, really well. There's a new energy in Denver.
With the music star expanding her discography into country, Beyonce's tapped into an entirely new fan base. This means she's showing more people the history that's always been right in front of us.
Pop culture is fueled, inspired, and anchored by history. And it is our shared history and the acknowledgement of all the things, the favorable and the unfavorable, that allows us to take accountability and to move forward together.
All right, this stuff is super interesting, and if you want to learn more about it, you can find Janelle's story on our website, 9news.com. And even though Beyonce won't be headed to Denver, the city still has a ton of Black artists to celebrate. Denver's Black History Month public art tour gives people a chance to look at local murals, mosaics, and more that were all created by Black artists. There are about 30 pieces in the collection, including Frank Garza's No Shoes Too Big and Ed Dwight's iconic I Have a Dream sculpture in City Park.
This collection is really a reflection of the city's identity, and these artworks are part of it. I think it's really important that folks understand the diversity of the collection, the diversity of Denver itself.
The self-guided tour is up on Denver Public Art's website under the Tours tab. It'll be up year-round, so the celebration of Black artists can continue all year long. And we always like to end our shows with some good news, but we figured we could go one step further and directly say thank you to the people generating positivity. So we've started a new segment on the Culture Report called Shoutouts, pretty self-explanatory, just giving credit to all the cool kids of Colorado. Without further ado, let's hop into this week's Shoutouts. In January, 9 News reporter Janelle Finch featured Justice Taylor, a Denver artist using his misprints for good. He's working with other artists to print and give out 100 hoodies to people in need for free. We caught up with him this week, and so far, they've given out 50 hoodies and plan on handing out the rest here soon. The goal is to give people who don't have a consistent or reliable place to sleep an extra layer of warmth on those cold Colorado nights. And one Colorado rapper is using his music to advocate for mental health after not voicing his own struggles within his community. Corey Matthias, known as Matthias the Great, went viral last year after speaking out about the state of mental health in Colorado. According to Mental Health America, Colorado ranks 50th out of 51 states, including DC, for the prevalence of mental illness. Now he's teaming up with a local mental health clinic to encourage minorities to seek help and break the stigma surrounding mental health. And Kevin John Goff is a filmmaker carrying on the legacy of his great-grandaunt, Hattie McDaniel. She was the first African-American to win an Oscar for her role in the 1939 film Gone with the Wind. McDaniel was also the first African-American woman to sing on the radio in the US. She found a spot in the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame, but despite accomplishing so much, she isn't super well known. Now, Goff is helping to keep her memory alive through filmmaking and public lectures. You can find all of these stories done by our amazing 9 News reporters on our website, and if you know of someone we should highlight, have a story idea for us, or just want to say hi, you can email us at culturereport@9news.com. Thank you so much for joining this week's Culture Report. We'll be back to continue the conversation right here on 9 News Plus and on 9news.com.